You learn to disappear long before you understand what disappearing really means. It does not start with one big traumatic event. It starts with small moments that repeat so many times that they finally become a truth about who you are. You speak, and no one looks up. You cry, and no one comes. You get excited, and someone tells you to calm down. You try to show who you are, and the room responds with indifference. A child cannot say my emotional reality is not being mirrored. A child can only feel that their presence does not matter. And slowly, quietly, they begin to fade. Maybe you remember this, not as a story, but as a physical sensation. Walking into a room and feeling like you are behind glass. Sitting at a table while conversations move around you rather than toward you. Wanting to share something that felt important, and sensing immediately that no one had the time or emotional space to hold it. You learned to read the atmosphere before you opened your mouth. You learned that some moods were dangerous, that some questions were unwelcome, that some versions of you were simply too much for the people you depended on. So you did the one thing that guaranteed a little safety. You made yourself smaller. The psychology of a child who grows up feeling invisible is not about personality quirks. It is about survival. A child will do anything to maintain some sense of connection to their caregivers, even if that connection is unbalanced or cold. If being loud gets you ignored, you become quiet. If expressing needs gets you criticized, you stop expressing. If joy is met with irritation, you lower your emotional volume. You start to believe that your authentic self is the problem. So you send that self into hiding and leave a quieter version on the surface for other people to interact with. This invisibility is created by emotional neglect, which is often more confusing than obvious abuse. No one yelled. No one hit. The house may have looked stable from the outside, but emotionally, there was a vacuum. When you were sad, no one said, "Tell me more." When you were scared, no one said, "I am here with you." When you were proud, no one said, "I see what you did, and it matters." The nervous system of a child is built through repeated experiences of being soothed, seen, and understood. When that does not happen, the brain organizes itself around emptiness. You learn to soothe yourself in ways that look like strength on the outside, but feel like loneliness on the inside. Growing up invisible changes how you relate to attention. Attention does not feel neutral. It feels suspicious. You may have noticed that people paid attention only when you did something wrong or when you were useful. Maybe you were noticed when you performed, achieved, or helped. Maybe you were noticed when you caused trouble or became inconvenient. Very rarely were you noticed simply because you existed. So your mind built an equation. Attention equals evaluation. Being seen equals being judged. Connection equals performance. You begin to believe that you only deserve to be seen when you are fixing something, solving something, or pleasing someone. This is where hypervigilance enters. Hypervigilance is a state where your nervous system is constantly scanning for threat. When you grow up invisible, threat is not always obvious. It is often subtle. A sigh, a look, a change in tone, a parent going quiet, a door closing too sharply. You become highly sensitive to these signals because they tell you how much of yourself is allowed in that moment. Can I speak now? Is it safe to show that I am upset? Will I be a problem if I ask for help? Your body learns to answer these questions faster than your mind can process them. That is why, as an adult, you sometimes feel yourself freezing or shrinking back even before you know what you are reacting to. Psychologists often talk about attachment. Attachment is the template your brain builds for how relationships work. A child who feels consistently seen and responded to develops what is called secure attachment. They come to believe I am worthy of love and others are generally reliable. A child who grows up invisible often develops avoidant attachment or an anxious avoidant mix. Internally, the belief sounds like this: my needs are a burden. I am safer when I manage everything alone. If I get too close, I will be disappointed or rejected. The strange result is that you might crave intimacy deeply, and at the same time feel an urge to pull away as soon as someone gets close. The default mode network in the brain, the system involved in self-reflection and identity, is shaped by early experiences. When your inner world goes unnoticed, Your default mode is not grounded in a clear sense of self. Instead, it is grounded in self-monitoring and self-editing. Rather than asking, "Who am I?" your brain constantly asks, "Who do I need to be right now so that I do not cause trouble?" You become skilled at taking the shape of other people's expectations. You mirror. You adapt. You soften your edges. You become agreeable. People might describe you as easygoing, low maintenance, always there for others. What they do not see is that these traits were carved into you by a fear of being unwanted. There is also the weight of shame. Shame is the feeling that there is something fundamentally wrong with you. When you are consistently overlooked, your mind concludes not that others failed to see you, but that you were not worth seeing. As a child, you do not have the cognitive ability to critique your environment. You cannot say, "My parent is emotionally immature or overwhelmed." You can only say, "I must not matter enough." This becomes a silent story that travels with you into every room. Every time someone forgets you, interrupts you, ignores a message, fails to follow through, that story is activated. See, you tell yourself, "I was right all along. I am forgettable." The emotional cost of this story is enormous. Imagine living with the constant sense that you are slightly out of focus in your own life. You attend gatherings and feel like you are watching yourself from the outside. You listen more than you speak, not because you have nothing to say, but because you are used to holding your thoughts inside. You might feel invisible even in relationships where people claim to love you. Not because they are cruel, but because you do not know how to bring your full self into the interaction. You censor. You downplay your emotions. You tell the shorter version of your stories. You say it is fine instead of saying it hurt. This invisibility is not just social, it is internal. Many adults who grew up unseen report feeling emotionally numb at times. They know in theory that they should be angry, sad, or joyful, but the sensations feel distant. The nervous system learned to dial down intensity to survive in an environment where emotions were not welcome. That same nervous system now struggles to turn the volume back up. You may notice that you think about your feelings rather than feeling them. You analyze what happened, explain it, rationalize it, but actually sitting in your body and letting the emotion move through you feels foreign or overwhelming. In relationships, invisibility shows up in painful patterns. You may find yourself drawn to partners who are busy, self-absorbed, or emotionally unavailable. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because this dynamic matches the blueprint imprinted in childhood. Being the one who cares more feels familiar. Being the one who waits for replies feels familiar. Being the one who understands while not being fully understood feels familiar. When someone actually offers you consistent attention, there is often a part of you that pulls back in suspicion. You wonder when they will get tired of you. You worry that you will become too much. You prepare yourself for the moment they finally see the real you and walk away. You may also notice that you struggle to set boundaries. Saying no feels like a threat to the fragile connection you have with others. If I say no, they will leave. If I ask for more, they will think I am ungrateful. If I stand up for myself, I will be abandoned. These beliefs come straight from the invisible child, who learned that their needs did not influence the environment in a reliable way. So you stay quiet when you should speak up. You accept unfair treatment and then blame yourself for being sensitive. You take on more than you can handle because you are afraid that if you stop carrying everything, no one will stay. In the workplace, invisibility might look like chronic underestimation. You do your job well, often beyond expectations, but you hesitate to showcase your contributions. You wait for people to notice your effort, the way you waited for your caregivers to notice your inner world. You avoid advocating for yourself, telling yourself that it is not a big deal, or that others need help more than you do. You may undercharge, overdeliver, stay silent in meetings and watch others voice ideas you had been thinking for weeks. When recognition does not come, you turn the disappointment inward as proof that you are not impressive enough, not charismatic enough, not talented enough. At the center of all of this is one core fear. The fear that if you fully reveal yourself, you will confirm the suspicion that you are unlovable. So you keep yourself half hidden. You reveal only the parts that feel safe. You show competence rather than vulnerability. You show understanding rather than need. You show strength rather than confusion. And then you grieve in private when no one meets the parts of you that remain concealed. Healing these patterns is not about flipping a switch and becoming loud or dramatic. It is about slowly teaching your nervous system that being seen does not equal danger anymore. The first step is awareness. You begin to notice the exact moments when you choose invisibility. When someone asks your opinion and you say, "I do not mind," even though you do. When a friend hurts you and you say it is nothing, though you feel a deep ache. When you are tired and you tell yourself to push through instead of resting. These small self-betrayals are the places where invisibility is maintained. The second step is validating your own pain. Many people who grew up emotionally neglected minimize their experiences. They say others had it worse. They tell themselves their childhood was fine because there was food, education, maybe even some affection. They feel guilty for feeling empty. But emotional neglect is real harm. The absence of attunement is not neutral. It shapes the brain just as surely as overt conflict does. To heal, you must allow yourself to say what happened to me mattered, and it affected me. This is not about blaming endlessly. It is about finally telling the truth to yourself. Inner child work becomes essential here. Picture the child you once were, not as a vague memory but as a real person you are responsible for now. See them sitting on the edge of their bed after another day of feeling unnoticed. See them bringing home a drawing or a good grade and receiving a distracted nod. See them swallowing tears because there is no one around who knows how to hold them. When you picture that child, something tender awakens. You might feel anger on their behalf. You might feel a protective instinct. That instinct is reparenting. It is the adult you stepping in to give that child what they did not receive. You do this by changing how you speak to yourself. Instead of telling yourself to move on, you say, "Of course that hurt. Of course you feel lonely. Of course you are scared to open up." Your reactions begin to make sense in the context of your story. You stop gaslighting yourself with phrases like, "I am overreacting" or "I should not feel this way." The moment your pain becomes understandable is the moment it becomes workable. You can only transform what you are willing to look at with honesty. The next stage of healing is practicing small acts of visibility. You do not need to start with your deepest secrets. You can start with preferences. When someone asks, "What do you want to eat?" you give a real answer instead of saying anything is fine. When a friend asks how you are, you allow yourself to say, "I have been having a hard day," instead of automatically replying, "I am good." When you feel hurt, you experiment with saying, "That upset me," instead of pretending you are unaffected. Each of these moments sends a signal to your nervous system. It says you are allowed to be here. Your feelings are allowed to exist outside of your head. Over time, you also learn to choose different relationships. You begin to notice who listens when you speak, who asks follow-up questions, who remembers what you told them. You pay attention to how you feel in someone's presence. Do you shrink or do you expand? Do you censor or do you relax? Do you leave feeling drained or seen? Instead of trying to earn love from people who are not emotionally available, you begin to place yourself where emotional reciprocity is possible. This may mean grieving the fantasy that certain people will change. It may mean stepping away from dynamics that keep your invisible child trapped in the same role. That grief is real, but it is a doorway to a different kind of life. Philosophers have long spoken about the human need to be witnessed. To be seen is not a luxury. It is a basic psychological requirement. The existentialists wrote about the terror of being a consciousness that no one fully encounters. Jung spoke of the unlived life, the self that remains hidden in the shadow because it is never brought into conscious awareness. When you grow up invisible, a large part of your life remains unlived internally. Healing is not simply about functioning better. It is about bringing that unlived life out of the shadows and into reality. You might find that as you heal, you experience waves of sadness for the years you spent hiding. That sadness is not a setback. It is a sign that you are finally present enough to grieve. You may also notice flashes of anger toward the people who failed to see you. That anger, when held carefully, can be protective. It can inform new boundaries. It can move you from passive endurance to active self-respect. Letting yourself feel anger does not mean you stay stuck in blame. It means you stop locating all the fault within yourself. There will also be moments of deep relief. The first time you reveal something vulnerable, and the other person responds with warmth instead of rejection, your nervous system experiences a kind of shock. You may want to pull back at first, but if you stay with it, you realize that this is what connection is supposed to feel like. Gradually, your body learns that not all visibility leads to hurt. Some visibility leads to closeness. Some visibility leads to healing. Some visibility leads to the exact nourishment you were missing. A child who grows up feeling invisible often becomes an adult with an extraordinary capacity for empathy. You know what it is like to be overlooked, so you notice others who are standing at the edge of the group. You know what it is like to be unheard, so you listen carefully when someone finally gathers the courage to speak. You know what it is like to feel small, so you naturally create space for others to expand. These qualities are not weaknesses. They are gifts that emerged from your own pain. The work now is to aim that same empathy inward, to offer yourself the understanding and patience you so freely give to others. The truth is that you cannot go back and rewrite your childhood. The years of invisibility happened. The nervous system was shaped. The beliefs were formed. But the story is not over. The human brain remains plastic throughout life. New experiences, new relationships, and new choices can literally reshape your internal world. Every time you show up a little more honestly, every time you let someone in a little further, every time you choose self-respect over self-erasure, you are writing a new chapter. You are not broken for having learned invisibility. You were adapting to an environment that did not know how to see you. The skills you built kept you safe in a context where being fully yourself was not supported. Now, you are in a different context. You have more power, more awareness, and more choice than you did as a child. The question is no longer, how do I stay small enough to survive? The question becomes, how do I grow into the person I was always meant to be? You grew up thinking that your presence was optional. You were wrong. Your presence has always had weight, even when others could not feel it. Your story has always had value, even when others did not listen. Your emotions have always been valid, even when others did not know how to hold them. The work in front of you is not to prove your worth. It is to recognize it. You learn to disappear long before you know what disappearing means. Now, as an adult, you have the chance to learn the opposite. You can learn how it feels to arrive in your own body, to arrive in your own mind, to arrive in your relationships, to arrive in your life. Not as a faint outline in the background, but as a full, complex, feeling human being who is allowed to be seen. You were never meant to live as a ghost in your own story. You were meant to be here, fully, with all that you are. The dark truth is that childhood invisibility stole that from you for a time. The brighter truth is that you can reclaim it. Step by step, word by word, choice by choice, you are allowed to become visible to yourself. And once you see yourself clearly, the world will never be able to convince you that you are invisible again.